Hey everyone, Sean Deveney here from Heavy.com Sports with our NBA insider, Steve Bulpett. We're heading into the home stretch of the season here, Steve, and we're looking ahead a little bit, looking ahead about what's going on. Let's start with the Lakers and where they are. This is a team that to me looks like they don't really want to be in the playoffs. Like they are looking for a merciful end to this thing. And the Western Conference at the bottom is so bad that they can't seem to get out of that play-in altogether. What's your take on where the Lakers are right now?
I never thought that assisted suicide could be so messy.
They're trying.
Wow, it's yeah. I just wrote a piece that I guess we'll be posting real soon. Mm-hmm. It's a notes column, and it leads with LeBron making the kind of unseemly tweet yesterday for April Fool's Day that he was shutting it down for the season. And it's like, like read the room, dude.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I'm surprised. But they've got, older players who I don't think I put on anyone individually, maybe a little bit Russell Westbrook, but I mean, you've got to figure out a way to make it work as a group. Okay, you're not going to be who you were 5 years ago, but what can you do? What skills do you have that can, be fit into the puzzle here to make this whole thing work? No doubt the injury to particularly Anthony Davis has, played a huge role in this. But you figure at some point they would say, okay, look, we're still good enough. Let's, to be out of the play-in right now by one game, but actually larger than that because San Antonio holds the tiebreaker over them. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have expected that a few months ago, even when they got off to the slow start. One of the interesting things to me is that if you look at the numbers last year when LeBron and Anthony Davis were playing, when they were both healthy, they had a pretty good record. They were, it was something like 22 and 11 or something like that. This year, when both guys are healthy, they're actually a game under 500. So it's not like, well, they haven't been healthy, and therefore, even when they've been healthy, they haven't been that good of a team.
But one game under 500 would be a step up for these Lakers.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
I mean, they take that, but it just, I guess my point is that they haven't. It's not like they've been a juggernaut when they've been healthy.
True, and look, and it's about pieces fitting. The reason that the LeBron Anthony Davis thing works is that LeBron gives Anthony Davis toughness that Anthony Davis doesn't have, and Anthony Davis gives LeBron a counterpoint to keep some of the defense away from LeBron, or to give LeBron an extra split second to make a move because the defense has to be concerned about Anthony Davis. So, these kind of symbiotic relationships are what you have to have. Look at the way the Celtics have turned it around by figuring out how to use each other better, how to fit better.
Yeah.
And the Lakers, it's just stunning to me that they haven't figured that part out yet.
Yeah. One thing I think we can say for sure is that we're probably seeing Frank Vogel's last games as a Laker coach. Not that this is his fault. I would argue it is certainly not, that this is the fault of those who constructed the team. But as the saying goes, it's you can't fire all the players. You can fire the coach, though. Any thoughts on possible replacements for Frank Vogel and who might make sense in that job?
I haven't really given much thought to it. I probably should have by now, but I think it's going to be a hard situation to step into because you've got a roster that doesn't work, and I'm not sure, because of the contracts they have, I'm not sure how quickly they'll be able to, do a remodeling. You know what I mean? Right. And I think it's a tough job to take. Look, when Frank Vogel leaves, he's going to lose like 20 pounds of emotional weight off his shoulders and his skull just as he walks out the door.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's like being the head of a hospital for, emotionally shaky people.
Yeah.
And I'm talking not just about players. I'm talking about top down. That's just
right.
Like a really strange. And I've talked to some people within the organization, and it's strange. I believe wouldn't their PR guy took that they'd hired the new PR person just kind of up and quit this week or last week.
Yeah.
It's it's a place that's going to need fixing before it becomes the Lakers again.
Yeah.
But it's then, as you mentioned, kind of amazing how quickly it went from, the top to here.
Yeah, right. Obviously they could take a couple of their assistants. Either one, Phil Hardy is, I'm sorry, Phil Handy is somebody who might be ready to take over that kind of a role. David Fizdale is another possibility, but he's not exactly had a sterling record as a head coach going back to New York and even his time in Memphis. But let me throw a couple of interesting names. I think Mark Jackson is a guy who is dying to get back into the coaching realm and is an LA guy originally. So he would be somebody I think who would have some interest there. Again, it's a tough job. So you need somebody who's I think you need somebody who's got enough of a name like Mark Jackson does, but also, is kind of desperate to get back in.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to either be like a young guy looking for his, that's wanting that first chance, or a guy who's had not problems, but has been fired elsewhere that's looking to get back in. First of all, I think Mark Jackson would be upset if he heard you calling him an LA guy. He's a New York guy.
Well, right. He lives in LA.
But I think he last time I spoke to him about it, I think he was living like in Calabasas, which is
right. That's what I meant.
Yeah. I mean, I can see those situations. I can see, like I said, a young guy. A young guy is going to get, he's got to worry about what's going to happen above him. Is there going to be manipulation? An older coach, a more experienced coach, will probably have to worry about the same things.
Yeah.
Is he going to be able to run his own program, or is this going to be something that gets judged every day by the people up above? And they've got to decide what they want, and it's not hard to, if you take a step back and look at how do we get from here to being good again. I don't necessarily begrudge the tack they took this time. They were champions a couple of years ago. They didn't get it last year. They've got LeBron James. They've got Anthony Davis. Let's patch in here with some guys with experience. On paper, it would seem to work, but you have to get those guys to step off the paper.
Yeah.
Paper that includes their resumes for what they've done in their career, and say, how do you fit in? Look at one guy in particular, Carmelo Anthony. He was a guy that supposedly couldn't, accept a lesser role. Only he went to Portland and did.
Yeah.
So that example, I think they figured, well, we can extrapolate that with other guys here, and it should work. But maybe it's some egos, maybe it's the interference from up high, or maybe it's just the fact that they haven't had enough time as a solid group without injury to get their stuff together.
Yeah. Well, let me put a couple other names. I think Brian Shaw would be interesting. He's sort of been excommunicated from the NBA coaching ranks. He made some comments about millennials or something a couple of years ago, and he hasn't been able to get back in. But as a veteran guy with Laker ties, he'd be interesting. And then I think anytime you have the Lakers, you've got to mention, I think it's required that you mention John Calipari as a possibility. Now, I have heard that Calipari would be willing to consider leaving Kentucky. That he might be a little. He's a god there for sure, and it's a comfortable situation for him. But the college game is getting tougher and tougher, and the pro game does have big money that you can kick back and collect, and you don't have to worry about the recruiting and all that stuff. So I think Calipari with the Lakers, why not? He'd probably have to have some GM say, some personnel say, but if there's a guy who come in and at least with the reputation to try to rescue that situation, might be him.
Yeah, and on the positive side for Calipari, every team in the NBA is better than St. Peter's.
Yeah.
So any loss wouldn't really be that embarrassing. Cal has the word I've gotten is that he's wanted back in the NBA for a long time, but he's been looking for the right situation. It's weird. I think it's hard for a college coach that's been that big a part of their program to change, to do the kind of change that's necessary to be an NBA coach. You're not the program in the NBA. Like there's some guys like Popovich, that have kind of because of longevity and things like that have become like the face. But I think it'd be difficult for any college coach. Well, for any college coach that's established what Calipari did. I think the positive example of a college coach moving to the NBA, and there haven't been many that have done it and really been successful, was Brad Stevens. But he was kind of a low-key guy, even in college, gets to the NBA as a low-key guy, because clearly it's more of a, sure, it's a player's game in college, but the coaches are the constant. And so they become the face. And I think, Stevens did a fantastic job with Boston. And it's not just, what someone like me or you might say, but you talk to his peers around the league, and there was an appreciation of what he did in Boston.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I do think Calipari, if he's going to wait for the right job, then it might just get to be too late, that at some point he's got to decide, all right, it's time to jump ship. I think the Knicks would be an interesting situation for him as well, given that Leon Rose is there, who's got a long relationship with, and William Wesley as well, who's always had a long relationship too. So certainly something potentially interesting there as well.
Yeah, and is Cal willing to, to change his on-court demeanor to fit the situation? I mean, a screaming coach can do well for a period of time, for a shorter period of time than a coach that handles things, in a calmer manner. Yeah.
Well, I want to change gears here, Steve, and let's talk a little bit about the Bulls, who have played better their last couple times out. 50-point game from DeMar DeRozan gives them 2 wins in a row. They've got, I think, 4 out of their last 5 are at home, so they're poised to have a decent finish. But I think that the stumbles that they've had, even though there's been so many injuries, I think the stumbles that they've had are something they're going to take into the offseason and say, wait, do we need to make some changes here? And I just wonder where you see the Bulls in terms of that, in terms of the pieces that they have. They can offer some picks. They do owe. They owe 2023 to Orlando and then 2025 to San Antonio. But they do have Portland's pick that is protected from the lottery through 2028. But they do have some things that they can offer in terms of picks. I think Vucevic is a guy they'd consider, if they can find a taker and package him with the pick, then, I think they've been a little disappointed. I think age has kind of caught up with him. and the speed of the game. He's never been a very quick player. And then, another question is Lonzo Ball. What do they do with him? They like AO from Illinois, and they've got Kobe White. Is it possible they move off of Lonzo Ball? So what do you see there for the Bulls coming up?
Yeah, I think the Lonzo Ball situation would be really interesting to watch because having a quote unquote true point guard is, that's become a real valuable commodity. But as far as what's happened to them this year, it kind of goes back to something we've talked about. You were kind of opining that they were, or intimating a few weeks ago that they were gonzo, they were out of it. They, forget about them. And I kept saying that, you need to see what they look like when Caruso comes back. And with him back, it's changed their defense, and they're getting more opportunity baskets because of that stuff. Because of the defensive pressure and just the defensive assertiveness they've shown. So going back to this conversation and what we talked about, having pieces that fit, I think they've realized that, someone like Alex Caruso, who's not a star in the NBA, right, you've got to find the right guys. AO is as good as he looks now. He's a guy that just intrigues the hell out of me, because I got to figure that if this is where he is at this point,
right,
what's he going to be with seasoning, with experience, with being able to focus his basketball intellect, develop his basketball intellect, focus his game, and make better decisions even, because this guy can play. Yeah. And if he stays on this track, then your bigger concern is going to be how long can DeMar DeRozan be a major part for you, because you want to stretch his window out as long as possible to take advantage of the people around him here.
Yeah, and I have to think that I agree with about AO and just what he's been able to do. He was a second round pick, but coming in last year, he was considered a lottery pick. Didn't play that well at Illinois and dropped. But you can see the physical gifts that the guy has, the length. You can't really teach that. And as he's obviously a tough guy too. He's got a certain grit about him that makes me think he's going to put in the work and he's going to want to get better. But that does leave some interesting questions with Lonzo, because you're going to have an opportunity to if you want to shop him. I think you can really bring back something of real value because, like you said, there were a lot of teams that wanted him last summer. And that's not going to change. And now that you've got him under contract and you can make a swap, that's something that would really be worth exploring for a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, look at a team like the Celtics. They were looking for a Lonzo Ball type point guard, but there's only a couple of those.
Yeah.
In the interim, they've realized that maybe Marcus Smart was right, that he should be playing point guard. And, so I don't think that the Celtics would be, have the similar interest as they might have last summer. I think if the Bulls choose to go that route and choose to move Lonzo Ball, then there might be a lot of things open to them. And, it could be something that even is like not a 1-for-1 or a straight 2-team trade, but it could be a situation where they move him for stuff, for picks, for assets that allow them to make a separate deal that gets them more players that fit specifically to their needs.
Yeah. I mean, he's that kind of asset that you can start, bringing in other things that you can then transfer elsewhere. I thought he'd be a great fit with Luka Doncic in Dallas. I'd like to see that pairing. I don't know.
Luka give up the ball enough to make that work.
Well, right, but if Luka were willing to be able to let a point guard run the show and then work off of him like that, that would be the ideal situation. You're right. We'll see if Luka has that kind of willingness, I guess.
Will Luka let a point guard be a point guard?
Right. I mean, I think it would be ideal for him and for the longevity of his career, but yeah, he's got to get there between his own ears for sure.
He's got to get there. A few more salads mixed in for Luka.
Yeah, it's funny because somebody was talking to me. We were talking about the MVP race, and somebody brought up Luka as a potential MVP candidate, and people aren't talking about him. And that's what I said is people aren't talking about him because the first month of the season he was just out of shape. I mean, he was not in shape. And if you're going to vote for somebody for MVP, it's 82 games, man. I mean, you got to if you come in and it's not that important to come in shape, then you're probably not the MVP, not that year, So, that conditioning thing is interesting with him.
Well, it's going to be, and I think it's easy to make snarky comments. It's a career, but you look at the guy and think, dude, this is going to determine the length and quality of your career. And if you don't start having these, discussions with yourself now, it's going to impact the quality of your life going forward. I think, without naming names, I think you and I could both take a second here, write out a quick list of players who've left the NBA and within a couple of years have been, candidates for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And we can joke, but these are life issues. If you're a ball player at all, you've got knee issues. And for every pound of extra weight you've got, that's 3 pounds of pressure on your knees. So, as much as it's fun to be in your 20s and 30s, if you're lucky, you get to live into your 50s, 60s, and 70s, and, think about what you want for quality then. So it's not just about Luka, the basketball player now. It's like, dude, this is the time to start thinking about this stuff because, hey, it's, first of all, your career, but then your life.
Yeah. You mentioned the Celtics, so we'll switch gears here and talk a little bit about the Celtics. One player in particular, Derrick White. What have you seen from him so far? I think there was some hope that he would show some better shooting. That's been a real problem. 38% from the field, 26% from the three-point line. Only 22 games, small sample size. Not fair to completely judge him by that. But what's your read on him and how he's fit in with the Celtics at this point?
What's amazing to me is that his shooting numbers have been that poor, and that it hasn't been a concern. He's fit so well. When the deal was made, I wrote that, look, this is they gave up a lot for Derrick White, but clearly this is a guy that Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka had targeted and said, this is our guy. So I said, hey, okay, you overspent in terms of, as we look at it from the outside, but if he's your guy, if he's the guy that you think works, then it's worth it. And I think it has been. The game he plays, the ball moves. He doesn't. The ball doesn't stick in his hands. Defensively, he's been very good. The shooting numbers. I still fully expect them to improve. But he was able to step in and fit in really quickly. And as an end of game guy, which I think you saw a little bit last night. I think you're going to see more of. There's a guy that handles it well, and when he gets fouled, he makes the free throws. I think he's one of those under the radar guys that makes things work. I
Yeah.
mean, so
Yeah.
he's not going to be celebrated necessarily unless he hits a big shot in a game. But he's one of those kind of guys that the more you see him, and you see that when good things are happening on the floor, that he's there, you realize that that's not really an accident.
Yeah, yeah, he's a guy obviously that Ime knows, that he coached in San Antonio, so a little surprised that he wanted him in Boston, and that was something that obviously he was comfortable with. I think we've seen that with Ime, that he really wants to feel comfortable with the guy before he puts him out there, and he certainly felt comfortable with Derrick White. And you make a good point that when Marcus Smart goes 2 for 8 from the field, you kind of notice it, right? I mean, that's been sort of the knock on him. With Derrick White, the shooting, it's not really something that stands out because he's doing all these other things.
And he's taking good shots. You know what I mean? He's taking shots in the flow. Look, you mentioned Ime, wanting a guy like Derrick White because he knew him from San Antonio. Before the season, when he took over as head of basketball operations, Brad Stevens said directly that he's looking for players that help maximize Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Derrick White is that kind of guy.
Yeah. With the defense, with, like you say, the ball movement, I think is a real key there. He doesn't need to.
We say ball movement, we also mean cutting and player movement too.
Yeah.
Getting the defense to move, and getting his hand in for loose balls, keeping offensive rebounds alive even at times. Said he's a guy that's a high level complementary player.
One more thing for you, Steve. We're going to change gears from the Celtics now, go over to the Brooklyn Nets, who are still waiting for the debut of Ben Simmons. What do you think? Are we going to see him before the season ends? Are we expecting him to have a playoff impact? And can they do much in the playoffs if he doesn't?
To the last question, I think they can do fine in the playoffs without him if their other pieces are there and ready. But he's a guy that if he gets there, I don't think he's going to be hard to fit in, because he's not a guy that's going to be looking to be one of those give me the ball kind of guys. If you get him, what you're going to be asking is defense from him, and and transitional basketball, opportunity baskets. So I think that's where his offense will be centered, if whatever offense he gives you. And look, we talk about critical complementary players. I think a guy like a Seth Curry is going to be a really important guy for them. Different, obviously, than a Derrick White, because Seth is more of a shooter. But I think that kind of stuff, if Seth Curry is hitting threes, or is spacing the floor, then you've seen a guy like Bruce Brown really step up.
Yeah.
But the key for the Nets, what may be their Achilles heel, is defense. They're scoring a bunch of points, and they're still losing some of those games. And that's really the critical part here. I think as you look at their pluses, minuses, their pros and cons. If they were to get a Ben Simmons back, it's probably kind of hard to do a defensive scheme on the fly, but just having a guy like that can guard his yard in multiple positions would be a huge boost for the Nets right now.
Yeah, he is sort of a plug-and-play guy defensively, because you can switch with him, and if you're asking him to play one-on-one, he's certainly got the mindset and the physical tools to do that. But the question is, though, is this a guy that the Nets see being a part of their team long term? That my sense was, and I know you talked to Sean Marks about a month ago, was that they kind of were strong-armed into making this deal. It wasn't something they necessarily wanted to do. That they did want to keep James Harden and see how that worked. Obviously, that didn't. They were put in a position where that wasn't going to be able to happen. Do you get the sense that Ben Simmons is like Brooklyn's guy, or would they be willing to, God forbid, put him back on the trade market next year?
I think, I think you're overspending for Ben Simmons for the role you want him to play. But if it's the critical role that can put you over the top, then it's worth it. I think he's a guy that needs to stay there, because I think, like I said, their issue is defense, and they don't have to worry like with the Sixers. I came to the opinion after watching, particularly in the playoffs, even as far back as against Boston a few years ago, that this guy offensively just making such terrible decisions with the ball. But if you take that concern away from him and say, okay, you don't have to be, the offensive catalyst. We have other guys for that are frankly better than you. Play your complementary role, be who you can be defensively and all that. Then the only way I would see the Nets considering moving him would be, well, first of all, you have to find someone else to take him.
Yeah, right.
Which is kind of, I think it was hard this time around. How do you pay a guy max money if you can't count him to be the guy, which obviously Philly couldn't really. Again, his numbers that he got, where I came to realize were a part of Brett Brown and first that the offensive pace they played with during the regular season, and that pace changes in the playoffs. But the only I could see the Nets making or considering making a move with him is if they got into a financial situation vis-a-vis the cap that really got out of hand, which I guess is possible.
Yeah, I mean, they already are. They're already way deep into the luxury tax. I think they'd be willing to move him if they do come to that conclusion in a different way than what Philadelphia did, where Morey really took a stand and said we're getting a star or we're not doing anything. I think that the Nets would be in a position with Kyrie and with Durant where they could trade him more for two high-level role players. If you think of, Sacramento was offering Buddy Hield and Harrison Barnes for in a package for Simmons. That the Sixers were never going to do something like that. The Nets, they're in a different sort of situation with the two guys that they have, where they could make a move like that.
Yeah, I know it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out in the column that is going to be posted real soon here. I think the second item is Ben Simmons item, or second or third item. That exactly how it went sour in Philadelphia. Ben realized early on that Daryl Morey was not in Ben Simmons's camp, and it became the logistics of not only tier one people in the arena, kind of brought that to light more. For a guy like Simmons, I think Brooklyn might be a perfect spot for him, though. I think it's incumbent upon him to really make it work, because here's a fit. You don't have to worry about being the guy that gets asked the questions after every game. You don't have to answer for this stuff. So I think that fits him. But as we talk about perhaps moving him, we're leaving out the elephant in the room, which is his back issue, right?
Yeah.
So, if this is not solved sufficiently, that's an awful lot of money for Ben Simmons and what he does and doesn't do for you basketball wise. It's an even more bag full of money for a guy that may not be, physically up to, it could be damaged goods.
Yeah, it's an excellent point because knees and even Achilles these days, guys can come back from that and they can recover and be the player they were before. A back thing is different. It's really hard. It doesn't happen too much, but when it does, it really does. Change a guy, and Dwight Howard was never the same after his back issue. Tracy McGrady had a back issue; he was never the same either. That's something that the science and medicine at this point doesn't really have an answer for.
Yeah, no, backs are. You can, having had a back issue back a billion years ago when I was trying to play basketball. These ways of strengthening places around your problem areas, but the little things don't go away.
Yeah,
and you've got to work really hard on maintenance to get on the floor. You talk about the improvements in sports medicine. Rob Williams, a critical part of what the Celtics need to do. Has a meniscus tear. It was of the type that they were able to just go in and snip out that part, and he's looking at 4 to 6 weeks, whereas that would be in the olden days, you'd be out for a long time, and when you came back, you'd have a brace on your knee that wouldn't let you go through a metal detector at the airport. They even had metal detectors at the airport.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have for you, Steve. Appreciate your time here and appreciate everybody taking a look. And we will check back in with you guys later. Have a good weekend.